think being a challenge is what makes it fun. My day is, I come across something new almost every day. There are different topics, there's different complex experiences that I have to maneuver, different personalities, different regulations. And I think that is kind of what keeps me coming back.
Welcome to Becoming the GC, the podcast that dives deep into the journeys of general counsels and chief legal officers, uncovering the insights and strategies that help define their success. Hosted by Joe Schul, founder of Inside Counsel Academy. We share real-life stories and practical advice from successful GCs, guiding you on your journey to the top. Tune in and discover what it takes to become the exceptional legal leader your organization needs.
This is Joe Schul. Today's guest is Carlos Lindo, a newly minted general counsel, and I think you're going to enjoy hearing his story. If you have a preconceived notion of how someone gets from law school to the GC chair, this episode will challenge that. Carlos started as a criminal trial attorney before moving in-house with Xerox. That is an unusual path to begin with. Today, we talked about the benefits of stepping into a role where outside counsel spend is out of control and the contracts are a disorganized mess. Stay with me to the end and I'll share my biggest takeaways. Here's Carlos's bio. Carlos leads the legal and compliance department of Lucid Health and serves as corporate secretary and executive sponsor of the Impact and Responsibility Council. In addition, he oversees an operational business unit, and we'll hear more about that. Lucid is a behavioral health optimization company that provides a platform of services to help health plans, providers, and members improve access to and quality of mental health care. Carlos's experience in both the courtroom and the boardroom has provided him with a set of skills that helps organizations reach the right balance of risk aligned with corporate objectives. So with that, let's get into the interview. So Carlos, it's great to see you today.
It's good to see you, Joe.
Yeah, where are you zooming in from?
I am down in Florida. I can't do the weather, so I need the warm environment down in Florida with the beaches to keep me nice and warm. Anything below 70 degrees is too cold for me.
Did you grow up with that?
I did. I grew up in Florida, so I was born and raised, stayed here, went to undergrad here, went to law school here, and kind of my entire career has been down in Florida. So it's been great.
Florida all the way through. If you had to live somewhere outside of Florida, do you have a favorite spot?
Oh man, that's a loaded question, but I would almost say it's going to be Europe. I love Spain. Spain is such a beautiful country. And if I could live anywhere other than Florida, it probably would be Spain.
Awesome. What's your number one recommendation for people to see in Spain?
Oh, everything. I love Barcelona. I've done running with the Bulls, and it was a great time that I probably will never do again. The adrenaline rush you get from that is great. Sevilla is an amazing place. Madrid is great. The food is delicious. Up on the coast. There's just so many great places. It's such a vibrant culture that has so many things to offer. Very good.
Okay, great. So let's talk about law. And I want to, hear your origin story. What made you what inspired you to pursue a career in law?
For me, going to law school was something I wanted to do probably since I was in middle school. So I've known I wanted to go to law school, and really it was either become a lawyer or become a doctor, and that was kind of my track. And so I don't know why, I just loved all of the TV shows about legal. I just love the environment. I like to read and I like to argue. So because of those things, everyone said you should go be a lawyer, and I think it's kind of one of those self-fulfilling prophecies.
It is funny, isn't it? Like it's one of these professions where people tell you should do that. It seems.
Yeah. And once the seed is planted, then it takes a mind of its own.
Exactly.
You just have to go with it. And so, when I was in high school, I worked at a home healthcare agency. And when I was working for that home healthcare agency, I had a lot of interactions with nurses. I had a lot of interactions with care managers. And when I told them in high school that I wanted to go to law school, they looked at me and they said, Carlos, if you go to law school and you ever sue a nurse or a doctor, we will find you and we will do things to you that are unspeakable. And I said, okay. So from that time on, I knew, all right, if I go to law school and I have this career as an attorney, I can never sue a doctor or a nurse. And that kind of laid the groundwork into why I ended up wanting to get in health law.
Very good. Yeah. I do find myself, whenever I'm in front of like as a patient in front of a healthcare professional, and they ask what I do, I'm quick to, after I say I'm a lawyer, I'm quick to say, but I represent the good guys. So,
Right. You have to. You have to.
Yeah. So did you go straight through undergrad to law school?
I did. So I went from went to undergrad at Florida State. So go Seminoles. I also went to law school and I went straight through. And then from there, I did about 3 years doing criminal defense, which I loved. I can talk about
what kind of cases?
Oh, I had everything from DUIs, misdemeanor marijuanas, up to arson, first degree murder, sexual assault, sexual battery, child pornography, like traveling to meet all types of felony cases I've handled. And it was fun. I mean, when I say fun, I will never experience, I think, another environment like that where your adrenaline is rushing. I was in court every day. It changes constantly. And so you always had to be on your toes. So for terms of problem solving and really adapting to your environment, that is a great training ground.
Right. And you've got, the gravity of that, where you've got somebody's future in your hands, had to make quite an impression.
Absolutely. And which is part of the reason why I ended up switching out is, I spent so much time there. I was spending all day Sunday at the jail. I would have family members call me on Sunday and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm on my way up to the jail. I have a list of clients that I have to meet with." And there were clients that you kind of talk to and have conversations and you're really behind. And those are the ones that take the most out of you because you are actually defending for their freedom. You are litigating so that they, if they were wrongfully accused, that you can actually give them, the freedom they deserve. Also, on the other hand, the other side of that too, there's clients that I wish I didn't have to represent.
Yeah, I'm curious, and I won't ask you about your own personal statistics, but imagine a hypothetical criminal defense lawyer. Like, what percentage of people do you think are guilty versus not guilty?
Oh gosh, I would actually reframe that question.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
And I would reframe it not guilty or not guilty. It's, did you commit, or are you guilty of the crime that you were accused of? Because I think so many times they did something, right, but the punishment or what you would do if you got what was required by law doesn't meet what the actual crime would be. And right. So there's all these scenarios where if you have what's called a scorecard in criminal defense, if you go by that specific requirement of your scorecard, you could be in jail for 30 plus 40 years.
Right. Well said. Yeah, that resonates with me. So it's more like, hey, are you trying to get justice so that the ultimate outcome here fits with the culpability in the act that was committed? And sometimes, obviously, in certain cases, people deserve to go away for a long time, but it seems like we tend to put, there's a lot of times where it's disproportionate, the offense and the ultimate penalty.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's kind of what you're fighting for in that realm. Interesting. Yeah.
Exactly.
I hadn't thought about that before. Okay. So that's a big shift. How did you make the shift to where you are now?
Yeah. So after I did that, I made the switch over to Xerox, Xerox, the paper company. And many people don't know that Xerox actually had a healthcare services arm. Through a series of interactions, they had the paper company and they had the healthcare arm. They ended up doing a divestiture, and then it went from Xerox and it became Conduent when they split up.
Okay.
And so they do a lot of Medicaid
doing, like
recovery.
Imaging machines?
They did a lot of Medicaid recovery. So they actually held contracts across the nation with different states to run a portion of their Medicaid program. Okay. So from third-party liability, from subrogation to actually managing claims out of Medicaid. So it was a lot of state-run contracts through the Medicaid.
I see. And how long did you stay there?
I was there for between 2 to 3 years. Mm-hmm. And that was fun. It was a fun role. It was my first in-house role. I really enjoyed it. But I was looking for something more. I really wanted to kind of grow in my career, and Xerox was a great breeding ground. I learned a lot from there. I kind of had a lot of autonomy, but I really wanted to take my career to the next level. And I just started looking for roles. And then I ended up finding the role I'm at now at the company. So I've been with my company for about 8 years. And it was New Directions Behavioral Health at the time. We have since rebranded as Lucid. And that's kind of how I was led there. I found the role online. after applying to many, many jobs. And I applied, flew out to interview, and here I am today.
And what were your responsibilities? How did they change from your position at the Xerox company to what now became Lucid?
Yeah, so Xerox, I would say I was really a generalist, and I had a specific focus on a small portion of what Xerox did. I focused on third-party liability and Medicaid contracts. So it wasn't an enterprise view of the work that I was doing. So when I shifted to this new company, to New Directions, now Lucid, my scope expanded to I'm not just doing one piece of work at a company. I was doing a majority of the legal work for the company under the general counsel at the time. So I came in as just a legal counsel position.
And how was it the GC and you, or were there other people as well?
It was the GC. They hired me with another attorney. So they hired two attorneys at the same time. And there were already two attorneys that worked there. So there were a total of 5 attorneys. They went from 3 to 5.
Got it. And what's the size of the department now? We'll talk about your evolution in your role, but I'm just curious.
So for the legal side, you're going to put me on the spot. On legal, I have 5. From compliance, we have 10 to 15. And so what ended up happening is the GC had oversight over both the legal and compliance team.
Yeah. Okay, great. And so it sounds like a pretty easy path, but I'm sure it wasn't. Like, what were the challenges and setbacks that you faced along the way?
Yeah, it sounds like an easy path. It was definitely an interesting kind of route to take. For me, for actually getting in the door was probably the most difficult path, or one of the most difficult things. It wasn't kind of built on networking or relationship. I was looking for specific roles. I was looking for healthcare companies. I was looking for remote who I could really be inspired by the mission, which is one of the reasons why I was really attracted to this role. From there, I felt like I was doing a good job as a lawyer. And I think as a beginning, legal counsel of the company, I felt really strong about my skills as an attorney. I was thinking, I could climb up pretty quick. And there was a lot that I learned over the last many years. It kind of makes me realize now is if I were given the same opportunity I've been given now, I don't know that I would have been quite ready for that position back then. And so while I thought I was ready, I was very mistaken. And going through and getting the experience and the reps of deep diving in different aspects of the company, of the departments, of speaking with individuals, it really primed me to be able to have kind of a larger scale view of how I view the business.
What didn't you know then that you know now?
Relationships are more important than textbook legal knowledge. And so what I was doing then, which was helpful, I would read as much as I could. And as much as I read, I would learn, I would look at case law, I would see how any cases could have impacted me. But now I know it's not just about the things that we learn in law school. It's not just about the cases and how the cases apply, or it's not about how the regulation or the statute applies. You have to have that as a foundation, but understanding the business is what I think really takes it to the next level. It's how you can apply that statute and give advice that can span the entire enterprise versus being very specific into one problem that you're solving, kind of in that narrow lane.
What do you think you still have to learn?
Oh, so much. I think that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned from starting my career and where I am now. There's always something else to do. There's always something else to learn, from relationship management, from how to interact with different individuals. I think from a personal side, I think building those relationships with the executives and the leadership at a company is always something you're going to be learning. You're going to be learning how to interact with different types of personalities, on the good and bad side. You're going to be learning how to give positive and negative feedback in a manner that's productive. And so learning the people side and how to engage and inspire someone, in addition to learning the constantly changing regulations that our government is in, especially now with so much change at the regulatory level, it's constant.
Yeah. I mean, you really, I can think of a few other jobs where you have to be learning every day, all the way from the first day you step into the role until you're done, because the nature of the role is you've got to be on top of evolving trends, laws, et cetera, or you can get yourself or your company in big trouble.
Well, and the trend issue is so important because there's not a day goes by that I don't get a phone call and say, hey, did you see this article? Or, hey, did you hear what, this congressman had to say? And if I'm not staying up to date on that, then I will have lost so much context in how to help the company make a decision towards something.
Yeah. So how do you do that? Because there's so much information and noise out there. Like, how do you cultivate information so that you're getting what you need, but in an efficient way?
So I think you have to scour news articles. But if you're only scouring news articles and reading the headlines, then I think you're doing it wrong. I think you have to read all sides and all views of a different article. But the best way is go back to the text. If there is a regulation that's been proposed, I don't want to get my information and understand what has been proposed in headlines or articles because I think they miss so much context. And so, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act was passed, which had a lot of healthcare implications. For me, I had to read that for myself, and I couldn't rely on summaries, even though AI does great summaries. I had to read it for myself to really get a good grasp of what are going to be the requirements or how does my company have to change because of it.
How big was that document that you had to read?
A lot of pages.
I bet.
A lot of pages.
No, but
almost brings you back to law school when the first day, I think our assignment was, hey, read this 500-page group of pages and then be prepared to discuss.
Right. We're trained to do that. And it's important to do that and important to remember to do that, in the age of AI, which can give you a bunch of tempting shortcuts and some real shortcuts. But it's at least not yet a substitute.
Right. It's so true. And even with my attorneys, the attorneys at Lucid are amazing. They're great. But you can always tell if you're speaking to outside counsel who just has a superficial understanding because they've viewed AI. If they've used AI just to get up to speed, you can tell there's a big difference of someone who's actually read the text and fully grasped what the requirements and thought through.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. While we're on the topic of AI, how much do you get business people using AI to, try to know more than you do about the law?
Oh, so often. I would say we are pretty good. We are very involved in the business. And so there are very, very few times that I think legal and compliance are not pulled in at the outset of conversation, which is amazing. It's a great place to be in a company. You do have to combat the, hey, I put this in ChatGPT and this is what it told me. Are you sure this is right? And of course, you always have to deal with those with tact and say, this is the actual requirement. This is the law and this is how you apply it. Because again, it's not just the content of what is the law. It is how do you kind of use the regulation or the statute and then balance it to make sure you're hitting that right level of risk. And, risk tolerance is something that I definitely did not understand when I first entered in-house world. It was just, here is the black letter of the law. Here's how you apply it. It's a yes or no, or this is why you guys make the decision. Now it is a balance where you have to say, is this a risky issue? Should you move forward? Is there a business objective? And then what is the level of risk that we have to make a decision on? Yeah.
And it's, one thing that's evolved for me over time with experience and the way the world has shifted is, and I'm sure you've experienced this. I used to get a lot of questions. I understand what the law is, but has there been any enforcement activity? And so you'd look for has there been any enforcement activity? But now, whether there has or hasn't, my answer is I can give you 5 other examples of where there was no enforcement activity, and then there was, right? And it mattered what you did in the past. So that's no longer a relevant question because the enforcement, especially in healthcare and in the country generally, has really intensified and been less predictable, I think, than in the past. Have you experienced that?
Oh, the lack of predictability has been a hot topic of conversation. It is so unpredictable in the sense that I've joked around bringing a magic 8-ball to our next board meeting when we start talking about the regulatory environment and saying, all right, what answer do you want? Okay, yes, this is it. Yes, it is very unpredictable and it changes. And because enforcement actions they've increased, they've decreased, you have to be prepared. And it's one of those scenarios where you have to really balance the risk, but you're not going to learn how to balance the risk until you really understand the direction of the company. You have to balance the commercial components, the financial components, how you're doing member care if you're at a healthcare company, how the patients are being treated. All of that has to be balanced before you can get to a right decision. It just can't be driven from one lane, because if it is, you're going to miss the mark and there could be things you're overlooking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It sounds like a really hard job. How do you keep yourself sort of mentally up for it day after day?
It is hard. We like to do hard things. We say that a lot at Lucid. We do hard things. But I think what keeps me going, number one is an exercise regime has to be on point. If there's no exercise, then mentally I don't function as well. You can ask my wife. She will vouch for that. Sometimes she'll tell me, you need to go for a run. And I'll say, okay, I'm going to go for a run, and then, I'll be better. I think it is hard, but I think being a challenge is what makes it fun. My day is, I come across something new almost every day. There are different topics. There's different complex experiences that I have to maneuver, different personalities, different regulations. And I think that is kind of what keeps me coming back, is because it's challenging, and, being challenged is fun. I'm not the type of person that likes to kind of sit and just coast or sit and do the same thing every day. So that's what really makes it enjoyable for me.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's an important mindset to have in the role, is not to be resisting anything that happens that, isn't exactly the way you would want it, because it wouldn't be a very interesting job, and people certainly wouldn't get paid what they get paid to be the GC if it was only sunny days, right? Like it's the weather and then how you deal with it that makes it challenging, interesting, and in a valuable position to the company.
I 100% agree with that. It is, how are you responding to different scenarios? It's the response that matters. There's going to be so many things that happen that you can control and that you can't control, but it's how you react to the things that you can't control that I think makes a really strong legal department.
That's great. As a GC, well, before I ask this question, I want to just sort of read people in on your path within Lucid to the GC chair, to the formal title and role. So take us from when you started. There was a GC, there were 3 other attorneys. Now you run the department. How did that evolve?
So originally I came in as a senior counsel under a GC. And then from there, I think there were a series of changes within our board where in 2020, we had really a change of control activity happen. And with that change of control happened, we had a lot of leadership leave. And when they left, there was kind of a spot opening. So I went from legal counsel, I went to senior counsel. And before that change of control, I was kind of getting moved up in my role at the time before any of that happened. And when the change of control happened, circumstances just so happened where I was the only attorney there. And so from there, I, as being kind of the sole attorney there, had a lot of work, and those were some trying times. At one point, it was me and then a paralegal who I brought in, and the workload across the company, doubled or tripled, but we were managing to really put some systems and processes in place. Mm-hmm. So when the change of control happened, I was presented an opportunity to take more of a leadership role and really run the legal department. Shortly after that, I was also allowed to take on the compliance. And then from there, my role has kind of grown. So currently I have the legal department, I have the compliance department, and then I actually have a business operational unit as well. I think there's about 130 to 40 people in that lane, separate from legal and compliance. It's more operational, but it's one of those things where I had some capability and it got matched up, and I still have it.
Nice. What does that business do?
So that portion is the employee assistance program for a federal government contractor. So we hold the federal contract for a governmental entity to run their entire employee assistance program. So we cover approximately 600,000 lives plus all of their dependents. So it's a large contract. It's a great contract. I enjoy working with it. I enjoy working with the team.
Very good. Okay, great. Tell me about what were the most important systems and processes that you had to put in place, given you had two people, first one and then two people doing the work that many more people had been doing previously. And then you said that work had doubled and tripled. So how are you keeping up at that time before you start hiring more people to help?
So there's two ways I can answer this question. And I think the first way I want to answer it is immediately it was managing your outside counsel spend and contract management. Those were two big things that needed to be set up. From outside counsel spend, we had no oversight or control over what our outside counsel was doing. So first thing I did was put in and implemented outside counsel guidelines. It was form engagement letters. These are the types of arrangements that I'm looking for. These are the outside counsel guidelines that I would need to abide by. And then working with counsels to make sure that we're reviewing the invoices and kind of setting the right behaviors. So outside counsel guidelines and that whole management of the process. And then from a contract management side, it's really getting organized to identify how many contracts were coming in, where were they coming in from, so you can start categorizing to see how you actually need to respond to those. Your commercial agreements are going to be getting priority from your BAAs or your quick vendor agreements. And so you have to be able to know what types of contracts are coming in before you can figure out which ones you need to address first. And commercial obviously should have some precedence. I will say that's kind of the system and process immediate that I took. Once I kind of was put over the legal department, what didn't happen as fast, and now I have learned probably one of the most important processes that needs to be is education of your leadership team. It is not just a process that has to be implemented, but it's making sure that your leadership, your CEO, your CFO, all of your execs, understand what are some of the pain points of your organization from a risk standpoint. It is if we know that we have a lot of concerns on the patient or member side of things, then we should be flagging to say, hey, I want to make sure you understand where our highest risks are. So that way, when you are building within the technology department, you can maneuver this as an individual. Or it's even coaching from how to have these different types of conversations. If you're dealing with an HR client who has to go through terminations, you want to make sure that they're educated on the things they can and can't say. And I think that training is almost more important than the processes and systems you put in from a pure legal optimization standpoint. But it's making sure that your executive, your leadership understands how to use legal and kind of work within their lanes efficiently in a legal and compliant manner.
Yeah, great. So much there. I mean, I'm going to touch briefly on the first part of your answer, which outside counsel. I mean, I get this a lot when I'm working with people who are new to the GC role. Outside counsel spend is out of control, to which I say, great, because then that creates a great opportunity for you to manage that, for you to then be able to build a department and still be saving the company money overall.
Agreed.
Right. And then there's no contract management system. Everything's a mess. Great. Because you can fix that, it's not that hard. You can fix it. And then people are, that's going to be a way to demonstrate 2 quick wins, a lot of value. Now, on the education of your leadership team, I want to hear more about that. So what does that look like for you? That's a harder one.
That's much more difficult. And it depends on the personalities of each individual. And I think the first thing you have to do is really establish a rapport. Like, you have to make sure that, they see you as someone trustworthy and reliable. Otherwise, you're going to get into conversations and they're going to go nowhere if they don't really value your insights. And so it's, how can you establish the rapport with those individuals? And then it's having constant communication with them. I think with our leadership team, across our senior and our exec team, I have conversations multiple times a day of just talking and saying, hey, these are some of the issues we need to work through. And so when there becomes a specific issue that we're dealing with, so say there's a more sensitive area with an employee or a more sensitive contract, then we'll get really granular and specific. And we'll start kind of, I don't want to say role playing, but we'll talk about scenario playing and saying, all right, if this scenario happens, how is this response? And, if they give me a response and I say, all right, if you do that, this is what the result will be. We'll have result A, B, or C happen. And then if that happens, then we have to go to a separate response. And so it's really kind of this scenario planning that I think adds the most value to that education. But I will tell you, there's nothing more satisfying than someone coming up and saying, oh, Carlos taught me the right way, so I have to ask this question. And if that's on a group call, that is how I really know I've actually made an impact, because I'm retraining leadership's way of thought to think more like a lawyer.
For sure. Love that. What about substantively when you went from being a lawyer on the team to being the lawyer on the team? What's a substantive area or two that you hadn't had to deal with previously that now was critical?
Board management is one of the biggest focus that I would have to deal with, of, working with different personalities on the board. Executive compensation is another area that you normally wouldn't have to work with. And then really all sorts of kind of HR or higher pieces of litigation. And so I was always involved with things. And most of my work at the beginning was related to commercial activity, but the scope of legal services extends to well beyond that. And then finally, it's really the strategy. We're in a highly regulated field within the healthcare. Specifically, behavioral healthcare is extremely regulated. And with that, regulation and regulatory has to be able to help drive the strategy of the business. And that is something that I didn't really have that experience when I first started out at the company.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what about compliance?
I mean, you always need compliance. The compliance officer I work with is fantastic. And when I interviewed for a compliance officer, she knows that I say this story a lot. Whenever I was interviewing for a compliance officer, if any compliance officer would bring up the 7 elements of a compliance program, it was an automatic turnoff for me. I would say, all right, nope, I need somebody else. Because to me, the 7 elements of a compliance program is bare bones. That's table stakes. I don't need to hear about those because I know what those are. I need to know how you are going to incorporate compliance into the business. And so, from my standpoint on things that I was expanded, it was driving the compliance function and having it kind of partner with the business to increase your integrity and your ethical component, but also make sure you were doing things the right and proper way. And that was an area that was very new, because, lawyers and compliance, while it's related, they're two different things.
Sure.
And if you don't treat them as two different things, then you can fall into some gaps.
Right on. Can I get really granular?
Sure.
I want to hear, how do you manage your email and calendar? Do you get a lot of email?
Oh, it is endless.
Have a lot of meetings?
It is endless. I think, for me, one of the hardest parts of making the transition from in-house counsel and going up to GC was the requirements of being more of a strategic level instead of an operator. And so I think before, my expectations for email management was I will respond to every email in a certain amount of time. I will hit and attend every meeting. I will be available at any and all hours of the day. And if you take that mentality as an operator, people do it and you can. But when you take that step to a general counsel, if you try to do that, your mind is going to go a little wonky. You're not going to empower your team, and you're going to be missing out on a lot of good work that you can be growing as a company. So for me, email management is making sure I'm responsive and reviewing. I think I review every email that I go to, but it's deciding, is this a me thing? Do I need to handle this? Do I need to have a conversation? Can I empower one of my VPs to take this on and really take ownership and accountability for this? Or is this not a legal issue? And I think out of those kind of 3 areas, it's important to really direct and guide, because there's some things that come to legal that is not a legal issue. And it's a quid pro quo, because you want them to come to you for a lot, but you also don't want them to come to you, for an accounting question. And so I would say tactically, going through emails, setting focus times has been a game changer for me. One thing that I have done, because the emails are so voluminous, is set period of block times where I'm really focused on, let me respond to these emails. Let me get through this chunk of email in this block. That way, no one is kind of throwing meetings on my calendar. And so I say I have an hour in the morning to kind of get through and prep my day. And I kind of know where to take the rest of my calls. And that's not to say I will never have a meeting during that time period, because you frequently do, but at least you're giving yourself the room to think. And I think giving yourself that breathing room to think and strategize is very helpful than just putting your head down and grinding.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more 1,000% on that. And people will say, well, I don't have time to do that. And, I say, you don't have time not to do that. right? If you're gonna really be, at the top of your game and world class, you have to discipline yourself to do that outside of here and there in between meetings and other people's priorities. Our jobs are a service job, and so responsiveness and helping others is the name of the game. But the way that we do that is not 100% letting other people dictate. It's a balance. And it's a balance between, reactivity and proactivity. So how do you make sure that you're spending enough time on things that you've identified that are important, but nobody is maybe clamoring for you to do them?
I think it's by picking up the phone. I am on the phone quite a bit. And so if I see an email come through, I'm a faster talker than I am a typer. And sometimes it's easier just to say, hey, let's talk about this issue that you just emailed me on. And so oftentimes what I will do is I will kind of categorize, this is a me issue. This is hey, let me provide this and get some accountability. This is not a legal issue. And from those categories, I will take a look and say, all right, all the me issues or the things that are on the fence, let me pick up the phone and call someone. Let me call our CFO and really ask this question and kind of get, is this an actual issue that we need to address, and what is the time component of it? So it's really about prioritization. And a lot of times when you're providing the services to multiple departments, everyone is going to have a hot button issue. Sometimes you're not going to be able to fully grasp how immediate or urgent it is until you get them on the phone and really flesh out what the issue is.
Right on. You mentioned your team, and I want to know sort of what your philosophy is as a team leader. What's the most important role that you serve for them?
That is a loaded question. I would say probably the most important role. I mean, there's so many good ones from, holding them. I would say holding them accountable, but really it's more of giving them an opportunity to excel. I think when I first started managing a team, one of the mistakes that I went through was I was managing the team like I was still working and doing the projects. So I was in a position where I was saying, all right, I have this contract. Hey, will you review this section of the contract for me and tell me what you think? And in doing so, I wasn't empowering them to take ownership. I was getting just a pinpoint of information. So they were losing information on the strategy of what the contract was for. Their focus was narrowed, so they couldn't actually register the full risk profile of the contract. And so the advice they gave was incomplete. And they were just kind of sitting there reviewing contracts. Mm-hmm. And to me, that wasn't empowering. And I learned that later on. It's, instead of just sending them a section of the contract and saying, hey, review this, it is more of a, hey, we have a big contract coming up. The deadline is coming up and I could really use some support. What are your thoughts on this contract? Can you take a look at me and raise any red flags? And handing over and turning the ownership and making sure that they were accountable and they knew that they were accountable for this, for the success of the contract signature was on them. I think that really helped my leadership style and really connecting with them. And so because you can connect on a personal level all you want, but when you empower them or make sure that they are continuing to grow, that's when you really start to see the positive success.
Yeah.
So there's, I've done historically what I call sink and grows. And I took this from a mentor of mine before, where it was once a quarter, I would meet with my team members, and on Q2 and Q3, we'd focus on syncing. Let's make sure our goals are synced together and that we're aligned in where we're going. And then in Q2 and Q4, we would focus on growing. What growth opportunities do you have? Is there something in the company that you want to hit or handle that you're not accessing right now? Is there any leadership that you don't feel like you've had exposure to? And doing those and kind of figuring out what they want in their career and trying to be able to match what we can offer for them, I think has really helped.
What would you tell Carlos if you go back in time as you're making the transition from being a criminal defense lawyer to your first in-house role?
Keep reading, keep learning, and you have a lot more to learn. It's not just about learning from a book, it's about the experiences you get. And if you're not putting yourself out there and getting exposed to those experiences, whether it's in a role that you're currently in or you're not actively seeking for those experiences, you're not going to be excelling as fast as you could. And so I would say go continue to get those experiences and value the experiences. Whether you have a title or not, It's the experiences that's going to make you learn to eventually get to the title. And so don't necessarily chase the title, chase the work that you're doing. If you are continuously increasing the caliber of work that you're doing, if you're starting to have more contacts with the C-suite, with the leadership team, and your exposure is more, don't focus on the title, focus on those experiences, because those experiences are what you're going to learn from and make you a better attorney and make you a better GC down the road.
And ultimately lead to so much more value for your company and for yourself personally. Way more important, I tell younger lawyers, like way more important is what you're going to have the opportunity to do rather than how much they're paying you at that moment to do it.
Right.
But okay, so let me shift to the future. What are you most looking forward to?
I love challenges. I think my personality type is I love challenges. And I think, at my company specifically, we just recently went through another acquisition. And going through that acquisition and having a new company presents ourselves with a lot more challenges. And so for me, I'm looking forward to kind of blending two more companies together and working from a legal and a compliance side to really build. Lawyers are a lot of times and GCs are focused on defensive play. But I really like to see legal and compliance be focused on the building. And so at the point that you bring companies together and you can learn to build together, build a product together that can ride the regulatory tailwinds, that is a lot of fun. And so that's what I'm looking forward to is continuing to build within our company.
Great. That's exciting. And I can't let you go without, I know you've recently signed up to do an Ironman, which for those who don't know is a long distance triathlon, a 2.4 mile swim, a 112 mile bike, and a marathon all in the same day. What possessed you to do that?
I have no idea. No, I do. It is always something that I've wanted to do. It's kind of a milestone that I've wanted to hit. I've always wanted to finish an Ironman. I think it is mentally challenging, physically challenging. And again, I enjoy challenges. And so this is something that kind of lines right up with my personality. And hopefully in several months, 7 to 8 months, I will be making it across the finish line to my first Ironman. I say first. I don't know if it'll be my last, but it'll be my first for sure.
Awesome. What are you strongest in? The swim, the bike, or the run?
I would probably say I'm strongest in the run. I grew up surfing because I live in Florida, so I'm very comfortable in the water. The biking that I've done, I normally ride a beach cruiser. So I'm upright and I just, like to take my time. So that is probably going to be the most challenging and difficult for me. But I am ready to learn as much as I possibly can while balancing a family and balancing my work life.
And which is really the challenge. I mean, I did an Ironman years ago. And when I think back at the training that was required back-to-back Saturday and Sunday, you've got to have a really strong why to do that for a good, you're seven months out from Ironman in Florida. I remember January 1 for a September race. My life was different that year than any other year. And I personally wouldn't do it again, but I'm glad I did it.
Agreed. We're going to have to edit that portion out because I don't want my wife to hear that. But no, I'm just kidding. She is definitely a supporter of me.
Well, this will be a great test to see if she listens all the way to the end.
Absolutely. Maybe I'll hear a comment of, what did you say?
Well, it's been a real pleasure talking with you, Carlos. I'm excited to see what you're going to do next. And you've got such a bright future ahead and such a great list of accomplishments up to this point. It's a real pleasure getting to know you.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been great. I could talk about this stuff all day. I love the legal career. I love the general counsel role and legal and compliance department. So this is fun stuff. It's challenging, but also very rewarding. So thank you for having me.
Right on. Thanks, Carlos.
Thanks.
All right. Good job. That was fun.
Hope it was good. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
The opportunity.
That was great. I learned a lot. I mean, it's, and then as soon as we end, I always think of these things and I'm like, oh, I wish we had recorded this part. But you, like, in some ways, I think there's like this traditional path to being a GC, and it's the path that I took, which is law school, big law, move in, corporate and M&A, move in house, rise up, then you're the GC. But what I'm finding from these interviews is like hardly anybody did it that way. Hardly anybody, right? And so everybody's got a unique path and such a variety that's been super interesting. And then, so yours was very different from me in that regard, and yet there are a lot of similarities. Like I look at you, the things you're doing. This I was doing the same stuff. Young family. Like I was so gung ho in the role and ambitious, but not in a bad way. But like, hey, I wanted to like spread my wings and see how far I could go in work. In triathlon was my thing back then, and in your family. And so I admire that, and it's inspiring. So
Yeah, it's fun. It's definitely been an interesting route to take. It's been a fun route. I would say it's always been challenging, but I definitely had different expectations about what it was going to be being a GC. When I went into it, I did not think it was going to be what I now know it was. And I think what I say now is, even from back in 2020, when I kind of had ownership of the legal department, it was different than what I thought it was going to be when I was at Xerox. I thought it was going to be just another attorney that spit out cases left and right because he knew all of these nuanced cases from, this 1960 that impacted healthcare.
Yeah.
It's not like this.
What's a case?
Yeah.
Just kidding. Yeah, great. Okay. Well, enjoy your day. I've sort of, when I did a reach out to folks, I got like 20 people lined up. You're fourth, and I just came out with my first episode, and they release every 2 weeks. So we're probably like 6 weeks out from hitting. But I'll give you a heads up when it does. And part of me, I'm like stacking them up. I may release them not on like a regular schedule, but just, like as I've got them, because who cares? It's not like somebody's like waiting for the every other Wednesday for the next one to drop, just pushing them out as they come. So it may be sooner, but I will let you know when that happens.
Perfect. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Thanks, Carlos. Really appreciate it. Keep in touch.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening. My takeaways from the interview with Carlos. Number one, the importance of educating your legal team. That way you aren't going it alone or seen as separate from the executive team. You're deputizing them to spot legal and compliance issues. Now they're on your side. Number two, no amount of legal knowledge is going to matter if you haven't built relationships with the people you serve so that they trust and rely on you for your advice. And number three, any good lawyer has the opportunity to rise to the GC chair. You don't have to start out in big law before moving in-house or only have done corporate work. Every one of the GCs I've interviewed has had what I'll call an unconventional path in one way or another. Okay, until next time, this is Joe Scholl. I'd love to connect with any in-house lawyers or outside lawyers serving in-house lawyers who are interested in maximizing their potential. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn and let's start a conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Becoming the GC. Whether you're preparing for the GC role or looking to sharpen your skills as a sitting general counsel, we hope this episode offered valuable insights and inspiration. If you enjoyed the conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your colleagues and friends. Explore more resources and join our community at InsideCounselAcademy.com. Please tune in next time for more insights and inspiring stories from successful legal leaders.